Hello and welcome to Makers.dev episode number 45. How did we get to 45? How did this happen?
Yeah, it's funny what consistency can do. Yeah, just every week, chew through it.
Amazing. What other things could I be doing every day that would lead to such monument? Like if I made a nice YouTube video once a week in the same schedule, I'd have 45 YouTube videos by now. If I shipped one marketing product every week for the last 45 weeks, I'd have 45 different marketing channels. And like one of those would have done really well. If I launched a new tiny SaaS app once a week, I'd have 45 of them. Consistency is amazing. What did you get up to this last week?
This last week, I went on a sort of vacation. My kids had fall break, and so we went to my parents' house, which is 5 hours away. It was good. It was a good break from things. My dad was turning 70, so that was nice. Got to see him turn 70, and so it was good. It was very clarifying. I didn't get much actual work done, but I had 5 hours in a car there and back to think about things. And that's what I got up to.
Turning 70. That's some consistency right there. Consistently living for 70 years. That's really cool. 5 hours for a road trip. I also went on a road trip, just a 2-hour thing there and back on a day trip, and found like you're saying, it's a very good medium for thinking in. Unlike the trip I took to Europe, which was I think a little too exciting to get some deeper thinking done. There's something about a road trip of like it's routine enough and it's a familiar enough area. You're not gonna get excited by it's another McDonald's next to a Walmart on the side of the road on this exit. We got to go there. You have time to sort of sit and bask in your own thoughts. I'm reminded of in raising kids. There's a movement I've gotten tuned into, talking about the importance of letting your kids be bored. That we have so many entertaining gadgets, and you can just toss them a $50 cell phone, and they can be entertained for the next 20 years. You sort of have to purposefully create these environments where the kids can be bored. And a recurring insight that I have is things that are good for children are also very good for me. So I am excited that you had these 10 hours of mental health boredom to be able to think about things. Lay it on me. What were some of your takeaways? What are some of your insights from this 10-hour meditation?
Yeah. So some of it is how effective iPads are, because yes, you give your kid the iPad and they're quiet in the backseat. Sure. But yeah, some of it is, so we had just talked about focus, right? And do I want to focus and on what? And I remembered an old project, the SaaS I built in a week, Acorn Chat. And I never actually fully tested the experiment that I was trying to do, which is if you get it into the Slack App Store, then how much organic traffic do you get? Do you get any signups, that kind of thing? I went almost all the way to that goal and then never got there. And so while I think you're totally right, I should focus on Meeting Place. I can talk about that more as well, but I want to finish that experiment first because I'm just really curious, basically. So yeah, and there's lots of things about Acorn Chat that would be nice if it actually started picking up steam. It's B2B, it's probably low touch, that kind of thing. So I have written down the list of things I need to do before it's ready for the Slack App Store. There's not very many things. A lot of it is like writing documentation and writing a marketing site that is more than just 1 page long, like that actually says what it does. So a lot of it's documentation kind of things, and then get it in the App Store, and then that experiment I will say is done, and I can wait a few weeks or a month to see what the results are. So yeah, so I think the thing I'm focused on this week is getting Acorn Chat to a point where I can put it in the Slack App Store, and I don't even know what the process for that is, so I'll have to learn that. Along with, I have to start 2 more labs for my master's, so I have to sort of tick-tock between those things. But yeah, that is my focus for this week.
Stopping right before launching it on the Slack App Store. First of all, it's not something I realized you had done. I feel like I'm a bad friend. I should have pushed you to do that. And also is just the classic thing that I do with projects like this of, I feel like as soon as I can see the end of it, I lose interest. I took some classes in stand-up comedy a couple years ago. And it was really interesting and really engaging for the first part of it. And I was just devoting everything I had to it and getting all these books and everything. And I got to the point where I had my first, they call it a tight 5. You have 5 minutes of compressed material where there's not a lot of downtime between it, and it's mostly funny jokes. And performing that, it wasn't great, but it was pretty good. It was decently funny. And I went through the process of doing it, and I could see the next several steps of like, oh man, to get this to a really tight 5, or to have a tight 10, or to be able to, do my own show, like this is what the process will look like. I would just need to be doing it more, and I can see each of these goalposts. And I remember feeling just like, what's the next thing to do? Once I can like see over the hill of, oh, this is the thing that would bring me the work, and I know what the work is, I would just need to repeatedly execute on this. There have been a lot of projects that I just completely lose interest in. Does that resonate with Acorn Chat? What do you think? I'm really interested in that moment of like, you knew what the right thing to do was, you had the plan going after that, but didn't follow through on it. What do you think happened there?
Yeah. So first of all, the doing things until you can see like the end goal or like the end, results or whatever, like, and then being disinterested after that. I do that all the time as well. Same thing. With Acorn Chat, I think what happened, I can't quite remember, but I did it for a week on Twitter. And then I think the next week I had something planned. It was either I was going away or I was doing, like, I don't remember, but something disrupted my flow the next week. And after that, I just never picked it up again. And that was it. Like, my goal was to launch it so that someone could pay me, and it worked. And those were I accomplished those two things. But my real goal was this experiment about the Slack App Store, which I never accomplished because, my flow got disrupted, and then I never went back to it. So, I want to go back to it.
Wonderful. I'm especially curious about that marketing channel in particular, because that's what we were talking about last week with File Inbox, of my experiments and getting those on different app stores. Seems like you get a lot of benefit just by getting it on the App Store, that they take care of the marketing for you, as long as you do whatever their checklist is of, you got to have terms and conditions, and you got to have a screenshot here, and you get a little boost if you have a video tutorial instead of the photo, which you could knock out of the park. That then you just don't have to think about it again. It's sort of a microcosm of SEO, where you have interested buyers who can get your thing with one click, and they're ready to buy, and they've already proven that they're ready to buy, and otherwise they wouldn't be in the store. I have high hopes for it, and I'll be paying special attention to this, because I'm looking at doing something really similar.
Yep. Yeah, it's basically like buying AdWords, except it's free, right? Because people are super high intent. They're like, if they're looking for a thing on the App Store, they're probably going to install it, and super high intent. Yeah, and I will publish all our results on this podcast. So stay tuned. Yeah.
I think the only downside that I see to this method of marketing, of going in app stores for different platforms, is I think the classic thing that happens is the platform steals your features and builds them into the product. But how are you thinking about that for Acorn Chat? Does that seem like that seems really tangential to what Slack's main business model is?
So that sometimes happens, but this is totally tangential to Slack's main core thing, and also Y Combinator talks about this sometimes, how startups, like, they worry about competitors, and out of all of their companies that they funded, they say like one, Kiko Calendar, was the one that was killed by a competitor, because Google made Google Calendar, right, and that killed Kiko. But then they went on to make Justin TV, which made Twitch, which sold for $1 billion, right? So cool. So don't be worried about competitors. Basically, the thing that kills startups is people stop working on them. That's what kills them. So don't be worried about competitors. Worry about stopping, which is exactly what I did with Acorn Chat. So I need to get it past the finish line. That that finish line at least. That
makes perfect sense. One more note on worrying about competitors. The classic case that I see this all the time, especially in Hacker News, is for native Mac apps, for things like Alfred, the search widget thing. When Alfred first came out, I think this is like 6 or 7 years old now. It was revolutionary, and it could search your whole hard drive, and amazing! It's a quick app launcher. And then Spotlight came out. I think that the order was right, or maybe Spotlight existed, but then Alfred built features on top of it. But in either case, over the years, Spotlight has just been eating away at the feature set of Alfred. That now Spotlight can do quick app launching, and now Spotlight can go to preference panes, I think, when Alfred could also. But the advantage that Alfred has over Spotlight is Alfred does not have to be a tool for everyone that has a Mac. Alfred can be a tool for power users. It can be a tool for developers. It can dig in much deeper and have a much richer ecosystem, that, like, even if the platform you're on totally steals your feature set, they can't. They like, if they try to copy it at a surface level, they're only going to be able to copy the features that make sense for everyone, because as the platform, they have to appeal to everyone. They have a much broader scope. Whereas you, making a plugin for this thing, you can narrow down and drill down much deeper into, my customer base is not people who use Slack. It's people who use Slack who have a website, who want live customer support, who want one of those chat widgets but want to be able to connect to Slack. Like, that is such a smaller segment of the Slack users that I can't imagine Slack ever going after them. And if they did, like, investors to Slack would be like, what are you doing?
Right.
You have lost your focus. This does not make sense for you to invest time in.
Right.
Neat.
And to be clear, like, there's already, like, I counted like 30 or so competitors that already do almost this exact same thing. Like, there's already a lot of people that do it. And so part of my experiment is what happens when you launch a very, in a very crowded marketplace. I actually think it's a good thing in this case because I know like exactly what people want because there's already been a bunch of people that made it. And so I actually think it's kind of a good thing that the pie is really big. And so it doesn't matter that there's 30 people vying for the pie. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah. Even in the case where there's other people competing with you in the App Store, that's a positive market signal. That means, okay, you don't have to invent this need from scratch. If you just do something a little bit better for some segment of people, if you're focused on, animal trainers who use Slack, who do this thing, like, if you're the tool that animal trainers on Slack use for this, you can really nail that use case. And nailing the use case doesn't have to be that crazy. It can just be you do one thing better, or you integrate with this thing better, or you have an icon that looks like an animal and it's easier for them to find it, or you're marketing outside of the App Store to people in this market. Like, yeah, I used to get so in my head about things like this. If I had an idea and found one other person who was doing something remotely similar to it, I would just get so discouraged and think, there's no use in me working on anything ever again. It's I've come to see that totally differently. Yeah, cool. Can you talk me through? This is what I would like you to do for me if I was in a similar position. Can you talk me through what the work is going to look like to get it on the Slack App Store? You skimmed over a few things of like getting it ready for the store and things that had to happen with that. Would it help you to dig more into that minutia of exactly what the steps are and set a timeline for yourself?
Sure, yeah. So timeline's a little tricky because I have to start my labs for my master's. So my goal is I would do it in 1 week, but I think it'll take 2 or 3 because of that. So here's what I have to do. There are a couple features left, which I know are going to be required in order to be just competitive with the things that are on the App Store. So things like it has to be customizable in a couple different ways. Part of my whole premise was that if you went offline, then you could choose whether it just didn't show up on your website or if it went to like collecting email addresses instead. It doesn't do that today, so I have to do that. That's like one of my core thoughts about the whole thing. And then there's a couple of minor feature things. Those should take a couple of days. Next is general onboarding. Right now it's super rough because it's just like I did exactly the minimal thing that would work. But if people are actually going to visit it with the intent to buy, then I want the onboarding to be a little bit better. So change the onboarding a little. Next, and then marketing. So right now the front page is super, super basic. I want like some screenshots, like what it actually does, what you can expect, that kind of stuff. So like people know what they're doing before they click the actual, like sign up button. And then the last one is, documentation. So like documentation can serve as marketing. So if you have docs as like a public, I've heard this before. It's come up on Twitter a couple times that docs is like one of the main drivers to the sign up button. People check out the docs a lot to see like what your thing actually does before they click sign up. And then it can also reduce support load if you supply documentation links in the proper spaces in the app. So those are the big things. A couple of features, marketing website, docs, and whatever the last one, the fourth one was that I said, and then get it in the App Store, which I think will probably take. I don't even know. I don't know if it will take a day or 2 weeks. I don't know the process yet. So learning about the Slack App Store.
Cool. Learning about the Slack App Store, public documentation, having it as marketing. I love that idea that documentation can be marketing because, yeah, I do that when I sign up for things. And that's something very lacking from File Inbox right now. Smoothing out the marketing homepage, smoothing out the onboarding, and then adding customizability features, specifically a toggle that you can say, hide this when I'm offline. Is that right?
Yep, that's it.
Cool. In 3 weeks, what would help you to make sure this happens? Like, there's no fire, there's no one saying that you have to get this done. It sounds like you're excited about it right now and coming off of the road trip. This is the part that I usually struggle with, is like,
Yeah.
I'll work on it for a couple hours on the most exciting thing, which, looking at this menu, for me, I'd be like, ooh, I want to make the feature of hiding when it's offline. Would probably be the most effective from a business standpoint to look at, like, what are the actual things that I need to do to get this on the App Store. Thinking about how we can help future Chris to get this done as close to that 3-week timeline as possible, what do you think would be the most helpful?
Is probably, so I got to this point by thinking about the experiments that we talked about like last week and the week before, because this was an experiment I never finished. So probably the most effective thing is writing down like exactly what I, like those 4 steps and what I think will happen at each 4 steps. And then like writing the whole thing as an experiment would probably be the most effective. So after this podcast call, I should probably like write down exactly what my timeline is and what I want to do and what my hypothesis is and what success and failure look like. And then, stick that next to my monitor, and that will probably be the most effective thing. Yeah.
Cool. I used to look at that so disparagingly, of like, this person has a sticky note on the monitor. What a simpleton. But there really is something to that, of just, you're reminded of it then 10,000 times a day. Every time you just glance over, like, oh yes, of course, then let me get back on track. And otherwise, the engineers at Facebook and YouTube win, because they're dumping hours and hours of energy and money into trying to figure out how to suck my attention away from me. And so if I just have something there that's can be as simple as a sticky note or a experiment sheet pulling me back in the direction of like, oh no, this is the path that I wanted to be on. And if it's not, okay, take it off and write a new sticky note then. That's a thing to help level the playing field. Good. Okay. This was, I'm reminded of a app that came out on, or it was announced on Hacker News last week, that it's like my understanding of it, is that it's a self-paced course on dealing with ADD. And I went through the first lesson of it, and it said something very similar of like, okay, this is the next step you need to do. You need to develop a habit so that you're opening this app every day. And to remind you of it, put a sticky note up on your monitor. And I did that. I did the first lesson 4 days ago, and I remember thinking in the moment, a sticky note on my monitor, that's dumb. I don't need that. I'll just remember to do it. And It's been 4 days since then, and I have not done it a second time. So yes, would be good for me to invest in some sticky notes. Part of this is like, I feel so guilty that I need this. Like, I feel like as a competent human being, I do my taxes and I grocery shop and cook for myself. I feel like I don't need that sort of thing. But yeah, I think merely the act of writing down what the next steps are and having something to pull you back of like, oh yes, this is the goal that I'm trying to get done. That's an effective step that is the difference between getting stuff done and not getting stuff done. So, okay, yeah, that feels good from my end. Does it seem like if you wrote those things down and stuck it up on your wall or on your monitor that this can get done? What other potential resistance do you foresee?
YouTube, right? Just like you talked about. Yeah. Also, if you ask me about it next time, then I'm sure I would that would raise my chances of actually doing it. Yeah. I mean, getting something on Slack App Store is an experiment I've wanted to run for a while, and so I have several background tasks that are like, what would happen if you get something, in the App Store? I've had something in the Jira App Store before, which worked out pretty well, and so I think the Slack App Store would too. And so, it kind of is reframing it from like you will make money if you do this thing to like you will learn new things if you do this thing, which is actually a stronger motivation for me in a lot of ways. So yeah, if I just think in my head, you're gonna learn a bunch, just do this couple weeks work and you'll have that knowledge for the rest of your life, right? That's an interesting way to reframe it.
Cool. I like that. Yeah, that feels tractable and resonates with me too. It feels like more of an internal motivation of if the work that I'm doing is to perform an experiment, that's something that I'm in complete control of, versus if my goal is to get this many downloads from the App Store, that could get discouraging very quickly if I just set unreasonable expectations. But I can succeed at performing an experiment no matter what happens. Cool. That looks good. I think you mentioned also that the I was correct in that you should focus on meeting place.
Yep.
Can we square that circle? What does that look like?
Yes, I need to focus on meeting place, which means I need to go off and do 3 weeks worth of Acorn Chat stuff.
Classic makers.dev right there.
That's right. Yeah, so like I was talking about this, like what should I do? And like Meeting Place is a thing that works now. It doesn't work very well, but it works, right? In terms of making me money, right? It works to do the thing it says it does. And so yeah, I like the people I interact with on there. Why don't I just, so it's something I know I can do for the long term. Why don't I just do the things I know would make it more successful? And I didn't have a great answer for that. And so, yeah, I'm going to do some more of that. I hadn't worked on it for a while. And this last week I fixed several bugs, which were plaguing me for a long time. The next biggest thing is I want to convert it from Bootstrap to Tailwind. And I want to do that for me. It makes no business sense, but I want to do it, right? Yep. And so I started that process as well. And that was before I decided to refocus on Acorn Chat. So I now again have competing, priorities. That's one of the reasons I want to finish the Acorn Chat stuff, and so I have fewer competing priorities, right? Yeah. So it's just your slight push was a reinvigoration of the things I already knew I liked about Meeting Place, and so yeah, I'm gonna focus on that. Some more.
I think that's a good direction to be aimed. It does make sense to me to get rid of the distraction of Acorn Chat to work on the next thing. However, I am sensing something that has been plaguing me for the last 7 years, which is my top priority has been file inbox, which means every time I write a list of priorities, it has consistently been number 3 and has never gotten worked on.
Yes,
and just so many other things. If whatever the shiny new thing is for positions 1 and 2, I'm like, okay, I'll just get rid of these distractions first, and then I can focus on file inbox. And I've come to start to think of that as like, I think I need something big and looming and important that's more important than the things I actually need to get done to motivate me to like do those things. And if that's the role that file inbox is playing in my life, like, okay, I'm actually okay with that. But maybe in the moment that I admit that that's what's going on, that trick will stop working. So I'm curious how you're framing that of like, is this, when I'm talking to you 3 weeks from today, it sounds like the picture that we're painting is like, you have performed this experiment, you've got an Acorn Chat on the Slack App Store, you've noticed an uptick in the number of signups for that, and you're just going to let that sit for a while you bring your full attention back to Meeting Place. And the way that this would go for me is that I would spend a week on Acorn Chat doing the most exciting things, which would be making the customizability feature. And I'd spend 3 hours on a nice little animated Tailwind button that toggled it back and forth and like made a little animation when completely needless when you toggled it so that it happened live and like zooped down and zooped back up. And then I would come up with a new idea of a new thing to work on a week from now. And then that would be the new focus. And the story I would tell myself is like, well, after I do this other thing, and also I need to get Acorn Chat back on the Slack App Store. Then I can focus on Meeting Place. I don't know if that's what's going to happen in this case, but I don't know. Does that sound familiar? And are there, even if that's not a thing that you think is going to happen with you, that's what would happen with me, and I would love your advice on how I could stop myself from doing that. Or if there's even a problem, maybe like the role that Meeting Place is playing in your life is similar. Like it's motivating you to get other things done. How are you framing all that?
Yeah, I give a high chance, a high probability that is exactly what will happen. So part of what I was thinking about on the road trip was like, I have to be okay with stuff like that. Otherwise, because that's how I operate. So I can say all this stuff, but I have to still, plan for things to go the way I expect them to go. And so I think things will be better if I focus on Acorn Chat and then focus on Meeting Place. Like I think that is what I think right now will be better. But in the moment, I'm sure I will come up with great excuses for why I do what I do. And I just have to be okay with myself, like operating like that. I have to like, otherwise I'll go crazy, So yeah, I don't have any good ideas about how to prevent that or or anything like that. Accountability helps. So this podcast helps a little bit. Putting a sticky note on your monitor, that helps some, right? But some of it is just like, I'm doing okay now, and I've operated this way my whole professional career, so I will do okay in the future. And so I can tell myself what I want to do, and I just have to, give myself some grace in operating the way I'm going to operate.
What a message of forgiveness. I feel like I'm being especially hard on you this week because I got nothing done last week. Nothing material. I got a lot of like spiritual work done. So I felt like you were talking directly to me there, and it feels good. Yeah, it's okay that this is how I operate. It has pros and it has cons, and like one of the cons is that it's very unpredictable what will get done. But stuff will get done, and I'll have a great time doing it. Yeah. Okay. Good. I guess this is a good time to pivot into some of the insights that I had this last week. I also went on a road trip, and I went on it in the middle of this funk of I had therapy with Sarah the day before, and the opening line our therapist gives us in the beginning of every session is, so how are we feeling? And I have been working on answering that question non-reflexively instead of saying like, I'm great. I'm doing fine. How are you? Trying to focus on like, how am I actually feeling? What are the actual feelings I'm feeling? And digging a little deeper. And I answered the question by saying, I feel very unmotivated. And I did. I just, the earlier that day or the day before, I had just drug myself through getting through emails, and it was a lot of really exciting emails and a lot of people reaching out about Cliffs.marketing and a lot of opportunities. And I have an email sitting in there waiting for me to push it forward for the next step on my personal assistant. And I just felt like I wanted to do anything else, that like I just could not get myself to do it. And I forced myself to. I set a timer, and I have the whole Pomodoro system, and like got down to the end of the inbox and set a timer for 25 minutes and got through the slug of emails, and then did a little celebration at the end. And like I was able to do it, but I just felt like, I don't want to live if this is what living is like. So that was the feeling that I was struggling with going into this road trip. And then on the road trip, I had a lot of the moments you're describing of like this sort of Zen prolonged meditation of like, this is engaging enough that I'm not looking for other ways to get distracted. I'm not being pulled to listen to podcasts or watch YouTube videos, but boring enough that I can still percolate and think about other things of what I want to be doing in work and in life and all sorts of those things. And ended that road trip feeling not more motivated, but just like clearer of like, I really like walking around places, and it's very enlivening for me to take pictures of beautiful places. And so the next day, I had to go to my parents' house, which is it's a 25-minute drive away, because I have my old car there that I need to bring to my house so that I can clean it out, and then I'm going to try starting to rent it out on Turo. And so the obvious thing to do is, I'll just get an Uber. It'll be whatever, $30, and then I'll drive back, and it'll take, an hour total. And instead, when I opened up my Google Maps app, it was on walking directions, and it said it's going to take 4 hours to get to your parents' house. And I thought, that's ridiculous. That's so much longer. But it's a beautiful day, and coming off of this road trip walking around, I had a great experience, and that felt like enlivening and rejuvenating. You know what? Let's walk. Let's walk to my parents. So I did. And it ended up taking 6 hours and was just delightful and was like recharging. And I ended that day feeling so jazzed about everything and having several ideas for like, here's how I can push these 6 projects forward, and like, man, and here's how I'd like to spend this week. I'd like to spend this much time on this thing, and then, I can slip in this thing about this thing, and here's another little project I can slip in there by just having a tweet about it. Last week, I feel like our main focus was talking about how to better systematize, like, I love this idea of experiments, and it feels like experiments are in this context of how can I better set my direction? And it feels like doing things like going on a road trip or going for a walk are not the steering wheel of motivation. It's like the gas pedal of motivation. It's like, if you want to go faster, focus on this much harder to focus on abstract, like, how do you feel about stuff, and how can you feel better and feel more motivated? And I feel like going on this super long walk yesterday was a really effective way to do that. That, like, woke up this morning, just I edited this video for 2 hours and felt like I was in flow the whole time. And now I'm looking at the rest of the day, just thinking like, oh man, I could do 6 other things today, and just feel great about the day. So that was my little insight about motivation and work. I think I'd like to get much better at. My therapist has called it self-soothing. This idea of like noticing when I'm in a funk and being able to more accurately identify the types of things that can, without sounding too hokey, like nurture me at a spiritual level. Getting better at when the problem is that there's no motivation, thinking about like what are the things that help me feel more motivated and inspired. And so I can add a ridiculously long walk to the list of things that can do that for me.
Yeah, we've said it on this podcast before, but I have to remind myself of this all the time, which is like, you will be so much more productive if you sleep well and eat well and drink enough water and get enough exercise. And this is a similar thing, like going on a 6-hour long walk sounds like you just lost 6 hours of productivity, but you actually gained, like infinite percentage or whatever. Because you were, maybe, not feeling so motivated, and now you're super motivated, right? Yeah, it's something that I have to do better at all the time. Like even stuff like for a while at the start of the pandemic, I went for a walk every single day, and that helped a lot. And then for some reason I stopped doing that, and I think that's one thing I should probably start doing again. But it's something that feels really it feels really bad to get started. But like as soon as I'm 2 minutes in, I feel really good, right? But it's just that activation energy that's just is really hard. So going for a 6-hour long walk is an interesting way to combat that, right? But yeah, I think it's neat now that you have one more thing in your arsenal and one more data point for walking makes me feel good. So yeah, it makes me want to take a walk after this podcast.
Cool. I'm reminded of the adage that if you don't have 10 minutes to meditate, you need to meditate for an hour. That like to take 6 hours and take a walk was a conscious choice that did feel sometimes like, oh man, I'm wasting 6 hours. But the alternative to that is not that I would be working for those 6 hours. The alternative to that is like I'd have some false starts to getting work done, and then I'd end up spending 4 hours on YouTube in little 5-minute chunks. So I'd really like to get better at that, like being able to forecast how, based on my current trajectory, like how consciously can I spend this chunk of time coming up, and can I instead of eating candy of just watching little 30-second TikToks, can I instead make a healthier choice of stringing all that time together to do something that would feel more meaningful and more nurturing and like actually be energizing? Because at the end of an hour of watching TikToks, my brain just feels fried. I feel like I have no attention span left, and my brain has just been drenched in dopamine, but I also feel really bad and gross and unproductive, like I haven't actually done anything, and that I've just been consuming stuff. So yeah, I'd like to do more things that focus me on longer term. Like I think I'd like to be asking myself the question, like, on the scale of a year, am I going to look back at the time that I'm spending right now as a positive or a negative? And I think for things like TikTok and YouTube, no. I'm going to be looking at those like, this is bad. And for things like going on a 6-hour walk, okay, well, 6 hours in the context of a year, that's nothing. I think at the end of the year, if I was looking back at that, I'd say, yes, wow. Can I do that 10 more times? Can I rejuvenate myself, on a weekly basis in this way? That feels like moving in the direction of living more purposefully and in a healthier way.
Yeah, something that I struggle with too, and I don't have a great answer other than force yourself to do it, I guess, which sounds bad, but like, yeah, you gotta do it sometimes. Yeah,
it feels like we're both making meaningful incremental progress through just talking about it. Feels good. One of the insights that I had that it wasn't insightful in that it was like new information. It was just sort of interesting how I was feeling about it. Dropbox had this deadline. I think I talked about this where I had to implement this OAuth thing, or else my OAuth system would break. They're getting rid of long-lived OAuth tokens, and instead having refresh tokens, which like I don't understand why. Like, what's the difference? They're both two numbers. Why it's just two steps if it's a refresh token, and it's one step if it's a long-lived token. I
can explain the difference, but it probably doesn't matter for this conversation.
I would love to right after, because this is actually a question I have. I still don't know how OAuth works. It's such a core thing of what I keep doing. Anyway, so I sent them an email just sort of as a Hail Mary 2 days before the deadline, and was like, hey, I have not done this yet. Could I please have a 1 month extension? And they replied back and said, oh yeah, you can have till the end of the year. So I have a very clear date now of like, this is a really good date to look at as the deadline for me to do the serverless transition. So that emotional insight that I had on this is like, oh, I actually feel really excited about this, because that's a long enough time that I can definitely get this done. And it's a short enough amount of time that there's urgency to it. I can't get distracted in working on other things. And so the serverless transition is a thing I've wanted to do for years, that now feels very clear. And after getting rejuvenated by this walk, feels like something I'm really excited about again. So we're going to get some sticky notes. We're going to put them up. I'm going to make a timeline of exactly what needs to happen. And it's going to get done. And it feels good is what the main insight was. Like this, it feels like a very manageable, bite-sized thing that I'm very capable of doing, that I like. That's what I got. Please tell me about OAuth. What refresh tokens?
Well, first, I will. So the quick overview is that refresh tokens are better for security because they don't, like, a long-lived token is basically like a password that stays out there forever, right? So that's sort of the difference. But I'm going to push back on you, just like you push back on me, which is, what would actually make this so you feel great now, right?
Yeah.
What would actually make this happen, and what do you think is going to happen anyway? Because if I were in your shoes, I would feel great for a little bit, and then watch a bunch of YouTube videos, and then go back to normal. Same question.
That's a really good question. So I think here's a handful of things that I could do today that I think would drastically improve the chances that this actually gets done. I think I can put a sticky note on my monitor that says make file inbox serverless. And I think I can look at the workflow of what it takes to get started on the project and make a single bash command and maybe like a button on the touch bar that just lowers that friction of like, to get started, I push this button and my server is set up and the project is open in Sublime and I have the website open to localhost 3000. And I don't know, maybe I have my to-do list opened up of what the next steps are. And another thing I could do is set up a redirect from youtube.com to localhost 3000. Oh, so maybe I read. Oh man, okay, this would be really good if I set up a redirect that like was a smart redirect that could do that previous step. So when I type in youtube.com and hit enter, which is just muscle memory of my brain feels itchy and I need to do something, if that instead redirected to localhost 3000 and opened up file inbox in Sublime with the to-do list, that would be great. What else? I'd really like to be hijacking the moments when I get pulled to be doing social media things of just consuming content. Oh man, I should delete YouTube from my phone. Okay, I'm going to delete YouTube from my phone, and if I can, I'm going to make a fake YouTube app that's going to be called YouTube that when I open it, it's my to-do list for file inbox. Because that's or maybe just like it's a text note that says go on a walk or something.
I had this thought, and it may be a terrible thought, but do you want to do it live right now? Delete YouTube.
Deleting YouTube on my phone. I'll delete YouTube Live on my phone. I'm not sure how to do the redirect.
If you do that, I will delete Twitter on my phone.
Deal. Twitter's never been a problem for me. I don't know why.
It's my problem.
Oh man, how do I even get to YouTube? Where are we down here? YouTube, and I can't. Hold on. No. Google, this is not okay. Yeah. How do you delete YouTube?
I just deleted Twitter, so you got to delete YouTube.
I don't know how. I usually press and hold on it, and then it lets me. Oh no, Google, you are not. Oh, disable. Okay, here we go. For those of you on the video podcast, I have it, and it's disable. It's not delete,
excellent.
And boop. What does that say? Disable. Yes, disable app. Boop. It's disabled. What happens if I search YouTube now? That's my main way of getting to this. YouTube. It's YouTube Music and YouTube Studio, so I can't search for it anymore. All right.
I might put Twitter back on my phone right after this podcast. I don't know.
Oh, come on.
But it's gone now.
Good. I want to do the same thing for the Chrome YouTube. I want to redirect Chrome.
You know what's terrible? I had one Twitter notification when I deleted it. I really want to know what that notification was.
It was me. It was me saying, "Come on, Chris, we gotta."
It may have been. It may have been.
That's what we should choose to believe. Cool. That feels good. And are you convinced? That seems like I'm knocking down a lot of the potential places where I could get sidetracked. What are
so yes, except a lot of what you suggested requires a lot of work just to not get sidetracked.
Yeah.
And so what I would suggest is just do the sticky note first and see how that goes. Like all the other things sounded like development effort in order to avoid distractions from development effort. So yeah, I think those are all neat things to do. But yeah, I think sticky notes that's what I'm going to do right after this, and I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Sounds good. I would do it right now, but I don't have any sticky notes, and I
don't either. I have some in the other room, so I'm going to go get those. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Immediately after this episode, I'll do that. I would love to talk about one more kind of fun thing. The new MacBooks got released mere minutes before starting recording this episode. I was a little late. I'm sorry. I was geeking out about the new configurations. I saw Adam Wathan tweeted. Oh no, I shouldn't tell you about interesting tweets. I heard through the grapevine that Adam Wathan may have recently purchased the maxed out, just like the 16-inch M1 Pro. No, M1 Max is the top one.
Yep.
Yeah, with 4 terabytes of storage and something else. I'm thinking of getting one. What are your thoughts? Have you looked at these yet?
So I looked at it just before this. I speed watched the Apple event, and then I figured out how much it would cost to buy the one I wanted, which is $4,300, which is a lot of money. And
that's as much as your graphics card.
That's more than my graphics card. Yeah. The crazy cool thing about these new ones is that they have integrated graphics. It's one chip for graphics and CPU, and you get all your RAM on the same chip. So it's 64 gigabytes potentially of graphics RAM, which is more than my card has, right? So it's not NVIDIA, so CUDA doesn't work out of the box, and so it's still up in the air whether or not you can take full advantage of everything that they're offering, but potentially this chip has more RAM than my graphics card does, which sounds awesome, right? Anyway, so what I knew before I priced it was that I wasn't going to buy one because I just bought this one, I don't know, a year or two ago. It's the one just before the M1s. It is crazy fast still. Everything, like, I don't notice a lag on anything. It has 32 gigs of RAM. I never run out of RAM. It doesn't have a graphics card, like, that I wanted, so I bought a different graphics card for it. Yeah, my computer's fine. I'm not going to buy a new one. But I understand the urge, yes.
I am also on the fence, and also in this position of, like, my laptop is perfectly fine. I edit text is what I do.
Right.
And I do some video editing, and sometimes that's slow, but it's not significantly holding me up. I have a couple reasons why I think I should buy it. The first is the last time I bought a laptop, it was this M1 that I'm talking to you on right now. I had the very clear thought, this laptop costs, I think it was $1,500, and it is so much faster than my last laptop. There is a noticeable difference in just everything I do. every little interaction is just 20% faster. And over the course of a day, that makes me this much more productive. And I've never totaled the laptop before. I've never like dropped it in a swamp or something. So I can sell it at the end of having it for some percentage of what it cost me. If I spent $1,500 for it, I could probably sell it for $1,000. So amortized over every day that I'm using it, it costs like $1 per day. And to spend $1 per day on something that makes me 20% faster, absolutely. All day long, can I do that 10 more times? So like while this laptop is perfectly functional, the experiment that I wanted to run the last time I bought this is like, what would it look like if I upgraded before I felt like I needed to? Because I feel like if I wait until I feel like I need to, it's too late, and now I've noticed, whoa, this is so much faster. That's one thing pushing me in this direction. Another one is my girlfriend needs a new laptop soon, and so she asked me, like, what laptop would you recommend? And I said, well, Apple's coming out with new laptops in about a week, and I wouldn't recommend that for you, but that would kind of be perfect if I sold you this laptop and then or just gave it to you. I don't know. It'd be kind of an expensive gift. And then I buy the new one. That's reason number two.
Yeah, so I'll say, oh, go ahead.
There's a third reason, but I'm still chewing on it. Well,
sure.
What are you going to say?
The second reason I would say is way more interesting and important than the first reason. The second reason, if you wanted to do that, that sounds like a great thing to give your girlfriend, and then you can buy a new toy, right? The first reason is interesting because, yes, it might make things more, more efficient for you or faster. But it's going to take you, like when I bought this new laptop, it sat for a couple of weeks as I got it, like all, everything loaded and all that stuff while I was transitioning off my old laptop. That it took a couple of weeks. Like my productivity took a huge hit while I was getting everything transferred. So consider that. Also consider like things might be 10 or 20% faster. You probably won't really realize, that you won't recognize the difference in speed. The reason that I might say that you could update it is if it allowed you to do something that you couldn't do before. So this integrated graphics, this huge integrated graphics chip, if it actually proves to be really good for machine learning, for example, then that might mean I could sell my graphics card and buy a new laptop. And that would be basically a wash financially. So that seems really cool. So stuff like that. So if it allows you to do something new, then that's interesting. But otherwise, like, if you're happy with what you have, be happy with what you have. Those are my thoughts.
I like that. The third thought crystallized, which is I'm also in a similar position. During the pandemic, I built this monster PC with a AMD Ryzen 9, I think, and a whole bunch of RAM, and that computer is currently sitting in my garage because I don't need it. The thing that would be good at is editing video, and when the N1s came out, all of a sudden it was able to just chew through stuff that I was having a super hard time doing on my last laptop, which I think was an i7. So I found myself with the narrative of like, oh, if I got the new MacBook, I could sell that computer. But I think what the actual narrative should be is I should just sell that computer. Like I would be perfectly fine doing that right now. And now I'm financially ahead instead of like trading money for it. And similarly with my girlfriend needing a computer, like the M1 MacBook Airs, I think are like $900 or $1,000, something ridiculous. I think that would be the reasonable financial purchase to do in this equation. So I think I'm going to do a little more specking out. just wasting time comparing stuff. But it's a form of it. If I can't have YouTube, I'll have the Apple store.apple.com. And I think what I'm comparing this against is $1,000 for getting her a new laptop. And then you brought up the transition cost of switching over. I kind of enjoy that in the same way that I enjoy moving, of like, it's not, it forces me through making hard decisions about the stuff I'm keeping on my computer, and it's nice to do a clean sweep. And it's not like the most productive way to be spending my time immediately, but I find that once I'm in this new environment and once I've forced myself to go through this deep cleaning and created all this space, that's the type of thing that I feel more enlivened by, of like, oh man, I have this new machine that's brand new that has only the things that I need on it to do this next project. And while I was setting it up, I added a redirect for the YouTube servers in the HT access file so that I can't go to it. So it's really just like I have recreated this machine for me at this time to do the things that I want. I can prime myself to do the work that's most important for me at that moment. And I'm still on the fence. I still don't know. I'm gonna think about it a little more.
Yeah. I thought of a couple of things, which is getting a faster machine is a little bit like increasing typing speed for programmers, which is, yes, it's important. Like if you type at 1 word a minute, that's way too slow. But if you type at 40 versus 100, it probably doesn't matter that much. So yeah, there's that. And then the other is like photography gear. So like I buy photography gear not because it makes me a better photographer, but because I want it. And right. And there's something to, like better photography gear will produce better photos in the hands of the same person, right? But the professional can do work with the worse gear also. And so it's like, there's some tension there. And like, if you want it just because you want it and you have the money and you buy it, like, I'm not going to say that was a bad purchase. I'm like, sure, go ahead and buy it. Yeah. But like, don't think it will make you more productive buying a new machine. Yeah.
Yeah. Realistically, a 50-cent pad of sticky notes is going to improve my productivity more than this several $1,000 machine. But the answer might be like, buy the things as I know that they'll improve my life. That, yes, buy the sticky notes first, but then if this is going to make everything I do faster, maybe do that too. There's just some little nitpicky things of like, it has one extra USB-C port, which would be so nice.
Oh, and it has an SD card slot and MagSafe.
Yeah.
No Touchbar.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic.
How do you feel about the Touchbar? I feel like it's grown on me, but I wouldn't be sad
I actually wrote down Touchbar because you talked about a Touchbar use, which I never heard before, which is you could do like lots of different things with it. So you said one Touchbar thing would launch your to-do list and start your processor. I've never done anything like that with a Touchbar, and so my Touchbar is let's see, I can activate it right now. It's volume and screen brightness, and it turns my computer to sleep, and that's all I have on there. And I accidentally hit it all the time, and I hate it. So I've minimalized the things that are on it, and I still don't like it. So yeah, I would switch out the Touchbar in a second. Maybe if I was more active in like doing multi-step process things with it, then I would like it better. But right now, I don't like it.
The most useful thing I have done with it so far is adding a little feedback countdown timer for my time tracker. So right now, I can see I have been involved in the activity of makers.dev for 1 hour, 10 minutes, and 26 seconds. And that just lives on the Touchbar all the time. But that doesn't need to live there. That could live in my menu bar.
Taskbar,
Yeah. Is that a taskbar? What's the top bar called?
I think it's called a taskbar. I could be wrong. Menu bar? Yeah, sure. Menu bar.
That's a sort of esoteric fact that I feel like I should know. So the transition to me won't be difficult. I have a bunch of pre-programmed buttons on there that I've put there too, and like I don't use them. I use keyboard shortcuts much more often than I use that because sometimes I'm on the laptop, but most of the time I'm using an external keyboard. So being able to just do keyboard shortcuts is much more reliable. I don't feel bad about saying goodbye to the Touchbar.
Yeah.
MagSafe
now,
is exciting.
now that we're talking about it, I would almost buy it for the SD card reader and the MagSafe alone. Like those are my two biggest gripes with this machine. Yeah.
HDMI they brought back too. I was surprised by that.
That's true. Yeah, I wouldn't need my dock anymore for most things. I still need it because my camera and stuff support like USB-A, so I still need it for that. But that's true.
Oh man, I just remembered. One of the main selling points of this machine for me in particular, they doubled the resolution of the webcam. So I would not need this external webcam, which I bought specifically because it was 1080p. I could just go based on the integrated webcam. In the notch, they added a notch to it. That's interesting.
They did, yeah. I don't know. Whatever.
I'm curious about how Mac OS is going to respond to that. Like, if you have an application that has more menu bar items, so it's like too wide, it goes all the way to the middle of the screen, will that then bump over to the right side of the notch? I guess that's the only thing that would be reasonable for it to do.
The screenshot I saw showed the notch in the middle of the taskbar or menu bar, whatever we're calling it.
Yeah.
But I actually hide mine for screen recording purposes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know what it's going to do if you hide it. I don't know.
I wonder how screen recording is going to be affected.
That's interesting. I almost always screen record on my second monitor anyway, which doesn't have a notch. So yeah, I don't know.
Okay. I wonder if I'll have to crop out the top. Because otherwise, I guess you would have the window going to the top. Because the window, it wouldn't make sense for the window to go.
No, I think the window will just go to the top, and the notch will hide whatever's behind the window. That's my guess.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird, but yeah.
Okay, then screen recording, I guess you'd have to cut off another. Screen recording, I think, would record the whole thing. I think that's how it works on the iPhone, and it just has like a blank space for where the notch is. So then when you're producing that, you'd have to crop that out. Which, okay, that's fine. Neat. Those are all my notes. Yeah, that's all I got.
That's all I got too.
Then I will see you next week.